The following podcast is a part of RadioMisfits.com.
We have chosen to omit names or use sound effects in this production because the individuals discussed have not been formally arrested, charged, or accused of wrongdoing in the death of Carol Ropstead. The Normal Police Department declined to participate in this podcast.
Welcome back, and thank you for listening to Episode 18 of Carol's Last Christmas. Before you listen, we need to offer a bit of context. Since day one, our investigative team has been ready and willing to work with Normal Police to bring a conclusion to this case. For years now, we have shared what we know with you, our audience, and with the lead detectives. At one point, the Normal investigators requested we hold off on releasing future episodes so that they could address some leads. We complied. They also talked with our lead investigator, George Seibel, about confronting suspect number 2 with a concealed recording device and interrogating him properly. That never happened. If you trust Google, especially in this age of AI, it'll tell you that true crime is hands down the most popular podcast genre of all. And there's plenty of listening to choose from, an estimated 23,000 true crime podcasts at last count. We know it's hard to stand out, especially when your cold case is 50 years old. People have died, memories have faded, but pain always remains.
Right now, as I'm talking to you, I'm tearing up. And such a wonderful human being was taken out of this world.
I could tell you exactly what she was wearing that day. She looked really pretty. She had a burgundy cable knit V-neck sweater on, and she had like a little dainty gold chain on. I think it had a little heart. You know, you see somebody, and then a couple days they're gone, you know, and of course when you're young, to lose somebody like that is very traumatic.
We'd like to think there are a couple of things that make our podcast different. At the top of the list is our lead investigator, George Seibel.
I don't know if they're really trying to solve it at this point, or if they would be doing nothing if we hadn't applied pressure and hadn't created our podcast. But the fact is, whether it's disinterest leading to the case being 48 years old and unsolved, or whether it's simply a question of an inability to put the facts together and apparent lack of interest on the part of the prosecutors, I don't know if it matters anymore. If one body of people over 3 generations of professional employees have had 48 years to get this thing done and they haven't been successful, then I don't feel any hesitation on my part to go ahead and do what needs to be done.
Yeah. George has decades of real boots-on-the-ground police experience through the neighborhoods and alleyways of Chicago. He's got the commendations to prove it, not to mention a second career teaching and writing about cold case investigation and especially interrogation. That's right, how to talk to someone in order to get them to talk to you. I've done a version of that myself over 40-plus years as a television investigative news reporter and anchor.
The police we're talking about have no ability to distinguish between what constitutes an interview and an interrogation.
Right.
Well, I just wanted to knock on his door, honestly.
My co-producer, Ali Daskalopoulos, basically found this story and resurrected it.
I figured that was the only way we were going to get in touch with him, and we have nothing to lose.
She's worked case prep, investigation, and client services on both sides of the legal system for district attorneys and public defenders. She's also put in the miles, chasing down leads from Chicago to central Illinois.
So I knocked on his door, and he's a super friendly guy. His wife answered the door, and she had absolutely no idea what I was talking about. She was like, "Oh my gosh, an unsolved case? Like, what? The murder weapon? Oh my gosh, let me go get Frank."
Because we have been unable to get authorities to convene a special grand jury, and because we've been unable to convince authorities that our podcast would actually benefit the investigation, we've decided to do something a little different. Today, we stage our own interrogation of suspect number 2. From Genuine Human Productions, this is Carol's Last Christmas.
Don't wanna die without no scars. Shoot from the hip, baby, shoot from the heart. Am I forsaken or just awakened? I'm a criminal, so despicable. Done the unthinkable, and then it feels good to be a criminal. So despicable, done the unthinkable, and then it feels good.
Chapter 18. Let's talk.
Criminal interrogation is the peace officer's oldest tool. When handled properly, it can be the most effective. We hope to show you within the next few minutes several approaches to the art of interrogation.
When you walk into the room, what are you trying to telegraph to whoever the person is sitting there?
You're talking about like in an interrogation if I was still a cop?
Yes.
Hey, dude, what do you want to drink? You need me to sneak you a cigarette, you know?
The interrogator must be a salesman and a good one.
I never got anywhere with. I never tried to scream at anyone in the talking. I just want to let them know that I knew what the hell was going on, and if you don't want to talk about this, it's up to you.
He must employ human understanding, and he must be able to recognize and interpret the various expressions of emotion.
When you have somebody who's like stuck in between possibly a witness and possibly involved in the crime, the way that I have always done it, and I've been pretty successful at it, is to say, hey, listen, you're either in or you're out.
He must cry and laugh. He must get tough. And he must show understanding.
This is your chance to be a good Samaritan and tell the world that you regret that you didn't bring this information forth a long, long time ago. However, this is your chance now. You're either going to be a good Samaritan and say your conscience bothered you and this is what you saw, or somebody else might think because you're not talking that you might have had something to actually do with it, because after all, the woman you were living with said you had blood and sweat on you when you came home that night. You were around and living like 40 feet away from where Carol Rostat lived before she got bludgeoned to death in your front yard. And, for a long, long time, we've developed a ton of information that two guys that you used to hang with and who are the two prime active suspects in this crime, both knew you from a couple different places. First of all, both those guys used to hang around the Red Lion and cause trouble, and we know that you were at the Red Lion too, primarily with and the reason that we know that is because an old-time normal detective who worked there as a security guy and bouncer at the time that the crime took place in 1975, knows that you knew these guys and you spent time with them, and so you're linked to those two suspects in the murder by virtue of the fact of a relationship and drinking buddies and bar buddies at the Red Lion. Secondly, you're also linked to the crime by virtue of the fact that the sorority house where she lived and died, in front of where she died, was next to a place that was called the Party House, directly on Fell Street next door. So the deal was that the Biddle family owned both of those houses, and people came and went from both of them. And so several different police detectives from back in the day referred to that place as the Party House, but what it really was a dope house. And people bought cocaine, powdered cocaine, and other drugs there, and sometimes used them there. And it was like an open-door deal. And we were told that there was a relationship between you and in terms of both dealing and using out of that place. So that marks you as somebody who was very nearby the crime, and so on. And then lastly, your then girlfriend and later wife, Janine, told everybody that she knew and trusted that on the night that Carol got killed, that in fact what was going on was that you were out for the evening. It was a cold winter night, and that when you came home, you had blood on your clothes and on your face, and you also were sweating profusely.
Presented with little or no interruption, Carol's Last Christmas has been an expensive endeavor. If you appreciate our work, please consider making a donation to help. Thanks for supporting us.
Visit patreon.com/Carol's Last Christmas.
Right when the situation in Bloomington happened, I must have been living in Indiana at the time. And I would get calls from her periodically that she was depressed and she didn't know what to do. She didn't want to live. She became suicidal. And at one point, she called me and after this murder happened and said, "I'm very, very scared. Has been involved in a murder, and I'm very, very scared. And I've gone to the police 3 or 4 times. I don't remember, but it was not once." Mm-hmm. And she says, "And nobody believes me. Just nobody believes me."
Janine did go to the police and tried to convince them of this on 3 different occasions at least. And, but, crazy is kind of a generic term. And, we know a lot more about mental health now than we did 45 or 50 years ago. In fact, what she was diagnosed as bipolar. And bipolar basically has to do with extreme mood changes from one extreme to another. And that has nothing to do with her ability to see what she saw. And she had no reason to lie against you at that point, because you were living together, and she showed her loyalty to you throughout the deal, even though she did go to the police. So if that isn't enough as to why we think you know what happened, there's more.
But she did tell me how scared she was of him, and that he came home, that he had blood all over his clothes, and that he was very sweaty. And I think it was that evening, possibly, that he said, "We've got to pack up and get out of here."
You instructed Janine to pack, and that you were taking off and leaving town. and that you also cut off your shoulder-length hair into a crew cut. Then you moved to Farmers City and stayed there for a while, and then you moved on to Towanda. We also ran into some people who had lived in the same building that you did in Towanda, and that Janita had some conversations with a lady that lived there and her boyfriend, who's now her husband, and that on one occasion at least, you grabbed a hold of her when they were sitting out in front of the building where you lived, and said words to the effect, "Come on, Janine, we are not talking to anyone anymore. We're not doing that." So all of those reasons are strong in terms of why it's obvious that you knew what happened. Last but not least, we know that you knew what happened for the best of all reasons, because many years later, in 1996, two police detectives from Normal traveled down to Tennessee to talk to you. He was given a polygraph test. He blew it up off the charts, and they said, "Dude, we know that you failed the test. You better start talking to us about this." Said, "Okay, let's make a deal. I will tell you everything you want to know if you grant me immunity." No. This is off the charts for dumb. Because what if he did it? You send him right back to another polygraph test, and you ask the question, did you have an instrumental part in the actual death of Carol Ropstadt? And there's no way in the world that would have said that he would do this, in my opinion, if he had an instrumental part in it. I've thought from that moment on that what actually happened was that he was kind of like the lookout because he lived out there, and they, after the stalking thing, they picked up on Carol. They followed her home, but he knows who did it today. But the problem is nobody's approaching him, because at this point there's no hammer on his shoulders to tell the truth.
We're running out of time because everybody who was alive during that time is either getting older, they've already passed away, or they're not coming forward to speak. The clock is still ticking. So you tried to cut a deal with the police and told them, according to the police report, and the quote was very clear, if you give me immunity from prosecution, I'll tell you everything you want to know about what happened to Carol. You know damn well what happened. You told them that you could tell them everything they needed to know, which means that you had absolute, positive, 100% complicit knowledge of what took place. I've been doing this for a long time with cold cases, my friend. You know, I'll tell you what I think goes on in killers' minds, or in people who are complicit witnesses or whatever else. Is that at the beginning, right after the crime, there's obviously a lot of worry and a lot of apprehension, wondering whether I'm going to get away with this stuff or not. And then a month later, the worry gets a little bit less, and then 6 months later, the worry is less yet. And, you know, with the passing of a year or two, you figure, what the F, I beat it. And so, you know, that's kind of how this thing rolls. So now, it's almost half a century later, And I'm sure that until my investigative team and podcast production company started raising hell about this case, that you probably hadn't worried for a long time. Well, you might still have to worry. If you're not worried about the normal police, I can tell you, and I'm telling you straight up, you believe it or not, because I really don't care what you believe, but I'm telling you straight up that we now have some other law enforcement people who are really interested in talking to you. And I would still stick up for you in the sense that I honestly don't believe that you took an active part in the crime. I think that you knew about some things that might take place, and I can fill you in on that too. Let me tell you a little bit about the two people that we know had an active part in this. Was a raging maniac and a big shot on campus, and he had a thing for blonde-haired girls, or at least he thought he did, and so he was attracted to Carol. And so on 2 or 3 occasions around the sorority house over a period of that academic year, he had tried to hit on her, and she had a really, really fresh mouth, and basically told this guy to F off in front of a group of people on at least 2 occasions. Once at a sorority gathering in a party setting, and another time when he was there because of his college senate job. He asked for a tour of the sorority house. And so he was walking up the stairs, and Carol was walking downstairs, and the college president went to introduce him, and she said, "I know who you are. You're that political troublemaker." And this guy turned red in the face and started hyperventilating and went into a silent rage as Carol walked by. So he apparently kept seething about the way that she had humiliated him more than once, and that, along with a whole bunch of powdered cocaine and some other drugs and a bunch of booze and everything else, I think primed him to want to hurt Carol. So I'll also tell you that before he died, he called me because he heard of our productions, and we had a long talk, and puts himself standing on the street, on Fell Street, right at the time of the crime. So we know that he was there. So the other thing is that this guy was a townie, an absolute raging maniac, as I'm sure you recall. And he had a rich history of beating the living hell out of women, both before and after the murder. And so a couple of years ago, in the process of our work, the local newspaper in Normal ran a front-page Sunday article about our work on the case. And actually what happened was that an old-timer who was an old biker guy and an old druggie from back in the days actually contacted our group and told us the whole story.
He continued to talk about it. And he says, yeah. He says, you know that girl over at ISU? I said, all right, they got 10,000 of them. Mm-hmm. Well, he says, that one got killed. What about her, Tom? He said that. I said, he did it. He did, John. I was with him. thinking, oh, what is this? And he says, I said, how'd he kill her, Tom? Well, he says, I don't know. He says, there's a limb or a club off a tree or a piece of wood. He says, I don't know what. He says, I know it wouldn't. And he says, I know beat her with it really bad. I said, how would you know that, Tom? Tom said, I was there. He said, I seen it happen. He said, I didn't help. I didn't hit that girl, but I seen it happen, he says. And just went crazy on this girl, beating her with this. So I said, wow, man, that's really strange, eh? Yeah. He said, now don't tell nobody. Why would I tell anybody, Tom? You know, actually, why would I? And so he left. I actually didn't see him for a couple of years till he was moved down to Florida. And I went down there a couple of times, see him, me and another buddy, and moved to Tennessee.
So here's the deal, man. You either want to be in or you want to be out. If you want to do this on your own and whatever, and I'll set up a meeting with any authorities you want to talk to, and just make a public statement that you regret that you didn't come forward with the truth before, and tell us the whole story from your point of view and your opinion of things as they took place. I can't imagine any way that you're going to get charged with anything, because essentially nobody in normal gets charged with anything ever.
We'll conclude this episode with a bit of breaking news. Sources close to the investigation have told us that normal police have contacted. He's the last man standing. The last who may know exactly what happened on that cold December night 50 years ago. He once offered to tell them everything they needed to know. He has now reportedly hired a lawyer and remains silent.
You know, sometimes what being a police detective actually has to do with is being able to touch someone's heart. You know, to just do the right thing for the right reason, and you know, not to get bouquets thrown at you or anything like that, but just to do the right thing for the right reason is a pretty good way to live your life.
Presented with little or no interruption, Carol's Last Christmas has been an expensive endeavor. If you appreciate our work, please consider making a donation to help. Thanks for supporting us.
Visit patreon.com/Carol's Last Christmas.
Carol's Last Christmas is a genuine human production, reported from interviews with friends, family, and experts, and based on official records obtained through the Freedom of Information Act. Lead investigator George Seibel, Chicago Police Department, retired. Investigator and co-producer Alexandra Daskalopoulos. Investigator, writer, and narrator Demetria Kaladimos. Voiceover recreation Justin Holder. Audio mastering and consultation by Paul Gibson. Music provided rights-free by Artlist, Blue Dot Sessions, Motion Array, and Storyblocks. Original music by Verlin Thompson. Graphics by Orlando Rodriguez and Thalia Kaladimos. Website and promotional material, Thalia Kaladimos and Jim Champus. Our theme song is Criminal by Benj Hurd, featuring Katrina Stone, courtesy of Artlist. Carol's Last Christmas is distributed by Radio Misfits. Our sincere thanks to the Reporters Committee for Freedom of the Press for pre-publication review, and to those who knew and loved Carol and generously shared their stories.